Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel,
And I'm Jaren Decker.
and we'll be your host today. Welcome to the first of a new installment for Anything Joe's, a series that we like to call Profiled. Profiled is simply what it sounds like. We've taken a character from the G.I. Joe universe, and we're going to examine him or her in extensive detail. We'll look at all the figures that are available, we'll look at the file card for that character, and we'll look at any other outside media that character has been utilized in, be it the cartoon or the comic book, the movies, the animated shows, you name it. So the figure that we picked today is a slightly lesser known character by the name of Bombstrike. Bombstrike is a character that has kind of risen to fame in the last 5 or so years, as she's been featured pretty prominently in the G.I. Joe Real American Hero comic written by Larry Hama.
Oh, hallowed be his name, really.
That's right. And actually, an interesting story, and this is not 100% fact, but something that I think I read in one of Larry's comics.
Oh, this is the best kind of fact. The ones that might be a fact.
This was in one of his letter columns, and it stated that people that he knew had been giving him GI Joe figures at recently at that point in the time, and because he had those figures, he felt more inclined to work them into the story, and I suspect that that's why Bomb Strike made it into the comic. Um, is because of that. I don't know if there are other figures that qualify for that, but Bombstrike is one of those characters where you're like, I don't, why her? Why now after so long? So I think that's pretty interesting, and kind of funny also that I can just see Larry on the writing table just being like, "Pop, pop, 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 pop." So yeah. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. We're gonna start with Bombstrike version 1. Bombstrike only has 2 versions, so it's going to be a pretty short ride. Bombstrike version 1 is part of Series 21, which released in 2005 as part of the Valor vs. Venom line. She's a completely original mold and contains no previous reworkings, which is kind of uncommon. Honestly, the G.I. Joe Hasbro is well known for wanting to reuse a lot of parts, some in excess, but at this point in time, the Valor versus Venom line was relatively new, so it makes sense that a lot of the components that were used to build the bodies were new as well. Jaren, go ahead and give me your first take on what you think about this figure.
Okay, so the first thing is, man, they really like putting the word GI Joe on shirts. That's my first thing. Like that immediately, that's where my eye goes. I'm like, oh, a GI Joe. I get it. It's a GI Joe. I think it's one of those figures that I'm like, okay, if I didn't know anything about her, I would be like, oh, she's just a generic soldier. Like, just from the figure, not counting her accessories and things like that. Just from the figure, she seems a little more bland. Like, I wish they gave her just a little bit more, maybe like some type of armband that looked kind of techy, or something like that to give her kind of a more standout. Instead of, she just kind of looks like she could fade into the background. I do like the mold, actually. I think it's, other than maybe the arms are a little bit wonky, but I think the mold itself is actually okay.
Yeah, Valor versus Venom is a weird growth period for the GI Joe line. This is not exactly the era of figures that you see displayed in most people's collection, if they have if they kept it at all.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's because they were experimenting around with what they wanted GI Joe to kind of evolve into, and these are a part of those baby steps where the figures that we have now, the modern GI Joe line, that's still 3 3/4, uh, is pretty great. I would think most people would agree, and especially for the scale. But they weren't in 2005 and many years around this era. They weren't quite there yet. They were experimenting with stuff that wasn't quite clicking. You can tell by this figure that this is still an O-ring figure, which means that it has the rubber band that holds them together in the center. And honestly, this figure is not substantially different than what a regular old school GI Joe looks like. She still has a swivel head joint, but still have the O-ring. We still have the separated torso. Probably the arms are the only thing that's really substantially different about these because of just the way that there's no like rivet in the arm and the where
Mm-hmm.
the elbow bends. And this is coming off of some pretty bad GI Joe figures. There was a run of these around this time also where the legs were just atrocious and didn't bend outwards at all. They were back and forth only.
Oh, I hate those figures. I hate any figure like that.
There's some bad stuff in this line that again most people don't really talk about. And and honestly this figure is one of the probably the best to come out of this era. If you look at the packaging for this figure, she came in a 2-pack with Crocmaster. And without getting into it too specifically, since this is not his profiled, that's an okay figure as well. Both of these figures for this era are pretty good comparatively speaking.
I like Crocmaster. I kind of want to, if I, I don't know how much this is on the secondhand market, but I kind of would like to pick one of these up just because I think they're a cool kind of duo.
Hey,
I
good news. There are no expensive figures in the Valor versus Venom line. They
That's true.
are
I should
they
have
are
understood that point.
they are available everywhere.
Let me ask you this: Valor versus Venom, the movie. How was that?
Not great. If you grew up, I guess, in an era where Valor versus Venom was promoted towards you as a kid, then I can kind of see how you would like it then. But it's all computer generated, and
Mm,
it shows why in over time how it's not aged extremely well, and it has a lot of the same kind of goofiness that you'd find in the original cartoon. Valor versus Venom is held over as well. Valor versus Venom has got a real strong like animal DNA vibe. If I'm not mistaken, there's what's his name? Venomous Maximus comes from this line, which is this weird, like they capture Hawk and he gets transmuted into this like half mutant monster that's supposed to lead Cobra. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on around this time.
it sounds like it. Sounds
Yeah,
like it sounds very strange.
it's very strange. I'm not hating on it, but I feel like most of the stuff that falls under this umbrella doesn't have a very strong pull with the fan base, and maybe rightfully so. It doesn't hold up very well. Although I guess in all fairness, the original cartoon doesn't hold up very well if you didn't really grow up with it. I know some people out there might think that's blasphemy, but there's some pretty dumb original cartoon episodes. I love them. I love them both. I love the great. I mean, they're great episodes of the cartoon, and there are really goofy ones. Actually, my favorite episode of the cartoon is one where there's this giant virus that's mutating and it's eating everything, and they get rid of it by they make it eat an apple field, and they're like, "Oh, well, did you know that every apple has a tiny little bit of carcinogen in it or something, and it kills like it's if you learned your science from G.I. Joe, then you are not a scientist today, I bet you."
They took out the virus by making it eat apples. I like that.
There's a lot of crazy episodes of the cartoon.
Yeah,
And
I know a lot of those cartoons. Like I went back recently, and I have been watching some of the old GI Joe. I also just finished rewatching the original Transformers series.
mm-hmm,
Man, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's amazing, but also it's something.
it is something. There's some
Very
pretty
much
crazy
something.
stuff going on there.
Yeah.
So let's look real quick at the accessories that come with Bombstrike. Bombstrike came with a black submachine gun, a green backpack, a black radio, a black handgun, and a black communicator. She also had a little instruction sheet, I guess, that shows how to put the radio together. But honestly, you probably could have figured that out on your own.
Yeah, it's
And
one of those things that looks like it's kind of the same thing to me that it looks a little basic, but you know, isn't that
yeah,
kind of what you want?
you see a lot of reused accessories at this time. I think every GI Joe came with that communicator that's on her arm. It was supposed to be some kind of like device to use to talk to the all of the other people on the team or something. I don't know. It was one of those things I never ever used.
Yeah.
But overall, as you know, as part of all the other stuff that came out this year or that in 2005, honestly, I think Bombstrike is probably the best. Before she got her second figure, I still used this figure quite a bit. I think I had multiples of them, partially because it was rare to see a new female created for the series, especially in at this time. And secondly, her head mold is, I know it looks not great now, but was substantially better than some other stuff that was on the line. I think I bought a second one, painted her hair brown, and put it on a Lady J figure that looked like she'd been hit by a bus. It
That
was
poor
pretty
Lady
rough.
J. Oh,
So anyway, that's Bombstrike version 1. I think Bombstrike is an interesting character, as we'll get into when we look at her file cards and her other appearances. And I think this figure is definitely dated by any standard, but it was still uh, quite a bit better than everything else that was out there at this time.
yeah, I can see that. It's one of those things that I wish I was a little more well versed, and that's kind of the point of this podcast, or one of the points is so that I can learn.
Hmm.
Because I mean, now looking at her communicator, that's cool, and it kind of makes up for what I was thinking about with the thing. I just wish it was just a little bit more, just a little bit more that looked unique. But it's the same way with most action figure lines. More females is always a good thing because it's already like a 10-1 at best odds of females to males. So
Yeah, if you look at I'm looking now at other figures that came out in 2005, and buddy, it is rough. It is worth noting that the comic book 3-pack started coming out around this time also, and they are way better than what they were working with here. Again, something else where they were experimenting with something and they weren't quite sure what they wanted to do. Those comic book 3-packs were like they were 100% original GI Joe, and they had crafted a newer head using superior technology to make them more detailed, and they're pretty great actually.
that's cool.
Most of the other figures from the Valor versus Venom line are not all that. So let's move on to Bombstrike version 2. Bombstrike version 2 came out as part of Series 31, which was released in 2015. She is part of the figure subscription service, Wave 3, Figure 9. So, Jaren, what's your take on this figure?
So I actually really like this figure. I think it fixes some of the issues that I had with the version 1. It looks a little more unique. It has kind of a more unique accessory that comes with it. I think the UAV is great. I think the little, and it's probably reused with Destro, but the little computer laptop looking thing to control the drone looks really cool. And I think the figure looks great. The body, the mold, everything. At least in my opinion. Granted, I don't know as much, but I think it looks great. This is a figure that I would own if it wasn't so expensive, or if I could track one down for a decent price. But yeah, I think it looks sweet.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Bombstrike is going into the figure subscription service, this is her one and only truly modern figure mold, is they have a lot of flexibility. This head mold doesn't look anything like the other one, and it also doesn't really look like what she looks like in the comic. So she's been through a lot of interpretation, simply because there's not really been a guide to go on. Um, Bombstrike version 2 comes with a way better accessory list.
Yeah,
She comes with a backpack, a rifle, 2 shotguns, a briefcase, and a UAV. They had started to make a shift from the previous figure, which we'll get into with the file card, where the UAV is a more, because obviously we didn't talk about this in the first one, but Bombstrike is sort of she calls in, well, bomb strikes for lack of a better word, and they have veered away from that a little bit in this and given her kind of her own drone that can go out and do surveillance and reconnaissance on its own. I don't love this head mold, and the head mold is the only part of this figure that's brand new. All FSS figures almost exclusively use existing parts, except for the head. They would have a new head created, and a lot of that is based on budget because it wasn't exclusively developed by Hasbro. The FSS worked in conjunction
okay.
with Hasbro. They'd been granted the license to kind of do things pending approval. So almost every FSS figure has to use existing tooling, but they would typically pay to get a new head mold made for every character, which is great because a lot of the existing tooling becomes very repetitive over time, where you can look at a figure with any color hair and go, "Oh, that's Helix." Again. It is interesting to notice that the card art for this Bombstrike is way. Actually, both card arts for both Bombstrikes are really good, but look nothing like their character overall. So Bombstrike's facial features are radically different across the board as you look at them, and I like both of the card arts for these. The first one has got a real, even though it came out in 2005, it's got a real strong Image Comics Gen 13 vibe going for it. I feel like it's really comic booky. She has really exaggerated proportions, and it's just real. But then if you look at the card art for the FSS figure, it's a lot more. It's got a more realistic vibe to it. And I like them both a lot. I like all of these takes, but again, I don't love the head mold for this. Just a minor takeaway though. I think this figure overall is great. There's a reason it's a high demand figure, and it's not just because she's a female character and newer, and the only modernized version. It's a great figure. Honestly, it works on a lot of levels. It's not overly done. She has a very simple camo pattern on her pants. She's wearing like a vest that makes sense for a Bombstrike operator. She does still have that great G.I. Joe logo. So I guess some things never change. But yeah, I like everything that I like. This figure as a whole, I think, is very well put together. And
I think cool. The only gripe that I have with this figure is that when you put the drone on her back, it looks like she has a tail. But
I'm gonna take a stab and say that just like the body parts, these accessories are also reused. So I'm guessing that the reason that UAV doesn't work very well is because it wasn't really meant for her originally. As a matter of fact, the one that I have open, it has like a peg where it's supposed to go on her back. The only way I can imagine she can wear that is if that backpack comes off. And that backpack is not really put on in a way where it feels like it's meant to come on and off. But this is pretty classic of FSS figures. Because it's such a low run, it seems like in general they're not quite up to the quality standards you would expect. They're real loosey goosey. It doesn't always connect the way you hope it does. They're not all like that, but I have certainly had some stuff that for the price I paid you would hope would be a lot more resilient.
So now you said you have an opened one. Does that mean you also have an unopened one?
Yeah, so I have an open one as well as an unopened one. Any FSS figure that I feel very strongly about, I like having one to mess around with, and if it's possible for me to keep one on card, I do. Billy comes to mind, and Pythona is another great example. Figures that I was so excited to use either in diorama or just messing around with. But I love the card art, and I like keeping that intact also. So when it was available in the budget, if it's possible, I try to keep them both.
Nice. So one day, once we get to a quarantine level that allows it, I need to come over and just look at the museum that is your collection.
Yeah, hopefully we'll reach a point where it's organized a little bit better. Maybe we can do something for the channel where we'll do a quick walkthrough and I can talk about show you some of the favorite pieces of my collection and
that'd be great.
Have it organized.
We can do that once you get settled into the new place.
Yeah. So that'll bring us. That's it. We looked at both figures. Let's head on over to File Card Theater and let's take a look at the background of Bombstrike.
File name:
Stahl, Alyssa Renee.
Serial number:
44834AS77.
grade:
E4.
birthplace:
Cranston, Rhode Island.
primary specialty:
Forward air control.
secondary specialty:
Counterintelligence. Some people think a great view means a serene mountain scene. Mine is a clear line to the enemy and an open path from bomb to bunker.
Bombstrike always hits her target, whether it's scoring a goal in soccer or calling in the correct coordinates for an airstrike. She's at the leading edge of the action, her eyes taking in all the details and calculating what will give her team the winning move of the day. In soccer, where it's only a game, she's a gracious loser. But it's different in battle, where lives are at stake. That's when Bombstrike plays to win, with focused intensity and uncompromising courage. She was last seen during an assault on a Cobra base. When the fighting was over, Bombstrike had disappeared. Because her brother, Barrel Roll, saw their brother Blackout among the Cobra forces, he's sure that his brother planned the kidnapping. The G.I. Joe team will not stop searching until they bring back their missing comrade, safe and sound.
So, that is the first file card for version 1 of Bombstrike. Interesting things to notice about this are the primary military specialty of Bombstrike at this time is forward air control, which again is kind of a loose leaf term for, as the file card will describe, she points out and helps mark targets for airstrikes. That might have been a little too heavy for a children's toy, which is maybe why they played it down a little bit. Interestingly enough, it talks a lot in this file card about how detailed she is, but when you look at the first half of the file card, it's really only about she's dedicated and she plays soccer and she gets her goal in mind. The interesting thing about this file card is at the end of the file card, it specifically says she was last seen during an assault on a Cobra base. When the fighting was over, Bombstrike has disappeared. Because her brother Barrel Roll saw their brother Blackout among the Cobra forces, he's sure that his brother planned the kidnapping. The G.I. Joe team will not stop searching until they bring back their missing comrades safe and sound. This might be the only file card I've ever seen that suggests that the character that you just bought is not available. is a captive of Cobra? Maybe. It's basically saying, we don't know what happened to her. She could be dead. Please enjoy this Crocmaster figure who we know is alive.
So basically they're saying, like, hey, you're buying this, but don't play with it because it would break the immersion because she's not there.
I don't understand the why it would be like this. Unless I have two theories. The first theory is that they wanted to put a plug in for Barrel Roll and Blackout, which we'll talk about in just a second because they're actually a key part of this story. The second part is that's sexism, baby. Just because you made a female character doesn't mean she has to be in distress. She's pretty great.
She needs to be saved, man.
Yeah. So this is the first piece of really true key information we have about the background of Bombstrike. Bombstrike, it has two brothers that are also part of G.I. Joe. The first is called Barrel Roll, who is a guy that is also kind of in relative obscurity. He was featured in the Devil's Due G.I. Joe comic for a little bit, but not much. And then she has, what's very interesting, another brother called Blackout, who has defected to Cobra and is a sniper. Now, Blackout, on the other hand, is another kind of rising star in the G.I. Joe universe. Blackout, actually, of the three, has probably been the most used over the years. He is a really cool character. Then, depending on which continuity of the comic you're reading, you can actually see how he kind of betrays and defects over to Cobra. Was also used a lot in the early IDW years. As a very interesting, he's got a great outfit. It's just like all black with some silver trim. Was a Cobra personality, not just another trooper. As a sniper, which is not a position that there are many of in the Cobra universe, was a very good addition.
That's really cool. It's like a little family connection there.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. You don't see a lot of that quote unquote family dynamic in the G.I. Joe universe. So having three siblings that were all tied into the same military universe, I think is actually a pretty cool idea. And these figures all came out initially around the same time. They weren't all, I don't think they were all part of the same first wave, but they were all very close together. And these are all figures that have had remakes over the years, mostly thanks to the FSS, and it's kind of hit or miss. That Barrel Roll has never really been a standout character, but that Blackout I think is extremely cool. I like him just as much, if not more, than Bombstrike.
So let me ask, what is Barrel Roll's specialty? Is he a pilot, I guess?
Barrel Roll's primary military specialty is actually listed as a marksmanship instructor. His secondary military specialty is a fixed-wing aircraft pilot, and that varies a little bit over which version you're looking at, but he's always attached to something that flies. He came with a glider. He has like a little jetpack. that's I guess that is supposed to tie into the barrel roll part of it, is that he's always in the air.
Okay, that makes sense. I need to do some research on him because it sounds like he might be pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll definitely cover barrel roll and the rest of this family at a certain point. Also, I should have mentioned it at the top, but it's interesting to note that Bombstrike's real name is Alyssa Renee Stahl, and that is actually the real name and birthplace of Hasbro lead designer Dwight Stahl's young daughter at the time.
Oh,
So this is one of many real name personalities that exist in the G.I. Joe universe.
that's cool. I like that. I always like, learning about the characters that are actual people, even if it's not just the named people, but people that have the likeness of other people as well. I just think that's always fascinating, which helps when you have so many figures. You need some help with the names and designs and things.
Yeah, it's also interesting when you look at these three characters all together, is that Barrel Roll is listed as a high altitude sniper, and Blackout is also a sniper, and Bombstrike kind of differentiates from those two. Although she's still a spotter, and that's kind of in the sniper territory. It's interesting that they were comfortable making three characters that were all kind of in the same wheelhouse. If you look at Blackout's file card for this, it also references Bombstrike, and it references what her original code name was going to be, which was Cadet Bombstrike, which again is an unusual nod to suggest that she's kind of a newcomer or a trainee, and that's not how she's been portrayed in anything since, which maybe explains why they dropped it.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I like seeing little variations like that. I think it's fun.
So let's take a real quick look at Bombstrike version 2's file card.
File name.
Stall, Alyssa Renee.
Primary specialty.
Forward air control.
Secondary specialty.
ISR, UAV operator. Just show me a clear line to the enemy and an open path from bomb to bunker.
Bombstrike is part of the new age of remote-controlled combat. She performs identification, acquisition, and analysis of assigned intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance tasks. The unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, is at the forefront of gathering aerial intel around the globe, minimizing the risk to soldiers, including herself. As a skilled operator, she is able to analyze intelligence imagery in order to make snap decisions to either pull the trigger or vacate the vicinity without ever being seen.
So there's not a lot of difference between version 1 and version 2. It's safe to say that when the FSS was working this up, they probably just wanted to use what already existed. Her quote hasn't really changed significantly. The file card descriptor is exactly the same, except they did cut out the part where she's been abducted. So thanks for modernizing the GI Joes to this era to make her look moderately capable.
She was gone for 10 years. And
Yeah.
then they're like, I guess she's back.
So this is interesting though, because the bottom part of this file card is where the UAV comes into play, and they start to play up that she does more surveillance and reconnaissance. Again, I'm just going to take an educated guess to say they want to kind of steer away from drone operated bomb strikes for a children's toy.
Yeah, a little too fresh in the minds of people, I think, nowadays.
Yeah,
It's a
so
little too real.
UAV stands for unmanned aerial vehicle, which is a pretty gray area, but if you look at UAVs throughout time, they are all in the vein of kind of what she comes with. And again, there's a very specific mention of gathering intel, so it's less about pointing out airstrikes and more about kind of running a drone for surveillance purposes, which I like. I think it works on both levels. G.I. Joe isn't exactly known for airstrikes, but there are certainly plenty of vehicles in the air in the G.I. Joe universe, so it's not impossible to think such a thing would exist. But her being included with something that qualifies as a UAV, I think, is very cool, and is a very good transition to something else, because it is listed as a secondary specialty. So I think that works well. I think this modernizes the figure. It puts a little bit more of a spotlight on what her purpose would be in the universe. You have any thoughts on that, Jaren?
I mean, I think definitely anytime you can steer away from bomb strikes, and remote drone strikes, especially, will help. But I mean, I'm all for updating within reason. I mean, I think for the most part, I mean, there's some characters you can't change. If they come out and make Snake Eyes a just full on talkative, crazy, snippy, snarky person, there people would have problems with that. But I mean, honestly, I would kind of like to learn. I think I'm gonna have to read some of these comics and kind of see, because it definitely, especially the first file card, kind of undersold kind of her ability. So I think it's always great. I'm all for strong females. So
Yeah, as we work our way through the recap series, we'll eventually get to what we're getting ready to talk about, which is Bombstrike's much more featured prominence in the comic. As a matter of fact, that's a perfectly good transition for Altered Resources. If we take a look at the comics, Bombstrike's technical first appearance is in the cover of America's Elite number 25. But most people are going to tell you that that doesn't really count because it's a group shot and has just about every G.I. Joe on it. Her technical first appearance is in America's Elite number 32, which is shown here on screen, but is the only appearance in the entire book where she says nothing and is just punching someone. If you really want to get into Bombstrike being used prominently, you'll want to look at the IDW A Real American Hero trade paperback, volume number 17. This story is Bombstrike focused, and even though she had been in the book prior to this, here and there, this is where she really takes the spotlight, where she's been sent in to do recon on a potential Cobra base, and she comes up across classic UK enemy, the Black Major, which is also his first time crossing over into the Real American Hero continuity. Bombstrike is, from this point on, is used in tons of storylines in the G.I. Joe universe. There's a pivotal moment where she shoots her point blank in the head, and you think for sure that she's done for, and she survives. Where the bullet doesn't penetrate the skull and it like skids around in her head. Like, it really is a crazy moment where she really shows what a tough character she is. Like, how what she's got some guts. She went on from this storyline to be featured in the Cobra's Venom story arc, which is where Dr. Venom returns inside a AI robot, and she was also featured very prominently in the Silent Option miniseries, which is where Helix crosses over into the Real American Hero continuity for the first time. She was even seen as recently as the story arc that's going on right now in the Real American Hero book, the Snake Hunt 12 issue story arc that's leading up to the big milestone in Real American Hero. She's in the very beginning of that, training with Snake Eyes. So it seems like more than ever that she's pretty much here to stay, and we're going to see a lot more of her as it goes on. And I think that's great. I think Bombstrike is a very likable character, has a lot going for her, has a lot, and also has a ton of room for development.
yeah, I think anyone who can take a bullet to the head deserves a chance to stick around.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Recapped. Jaren, if you had to give Bombstrike overall a 1 to 5 star rating, what would you give her?
Are we talking? We're talking overall. We're talking comic appearances, figure, version 1, version 2, everything all together, right?
Yeah, factor it all in.
I'm gonna say, oh man, that first figure, man. I'd say probably a 3.5 stars would be my thing. But I feel like she's got a good trajectory, so it's one of those things that she'll just keep climbing. Hopefully, as long as they keep kind of investing in her character and her backstory and giving her a little bit more. Just because there isn't a whole lot there yet for her backstory, at least explaining things. But I mean, I think she's a solid character and definitely deserves to be utilized more heavily.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit more kind. I'm gonna give her 4 stars. I don't think she's the I don't think she's ever going to be the team leader. And there are certainly other characters that are more likable and prominent. We got to save those 5 stars for the true heroes of the series. But like again, I really like this character. The more that she develops especially in the comic, the more attached I feel to her, and the more fleshed out her personality is. So when I look at these toys or I'm using them in a diorama, I have a better like mentality on, hey, I know what she would do in this situation, or I know how she would be used in this combat scenario. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Profiled. We hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe. Share this video with other people that you might think enjoy it. And remember, everything's open for discussion here, and anything Joe's.